Okay, good. Okay, good. So, hello, welcome. Namaste in India. um, we are starting the our session for the Library Create called Dialogue. And in the dialogue session today, we have our Alderman-at-Large, John Laesch from city of Aurora, which is very close to Chicago. So welcome, John. We are really
Thank you.
excited to have you here and talk about the education, about young kids, and your views, how we can leverage your experience to empower the high school kids in India and all across the world, and what schools can do for them. So before we start the discussion, I would appreciate if you can introduce yourself a little bit.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on here. I'm more and more excited to learn about the work that LibraryCreate is doing in our own community, but would really like to learn more about what is happening in India. And thank you for this opportunity to have the dialogue. I did not grow up in the United States, actually. I grew up in Monrovia, Liberia, West Africa. So I have a little bit of international experience. And I did serve in the U.S. Navy in Manama, Bahrain from 96 to 1999. So I did live abroad and have a little bit different perspective than what maybe your normal American brings to the table. I'm very concerned about the climate crisis, probably the number one issue that I see as important for us to leave a better world, a more intact world, so the future generations have an opportunity just to live and survive. So income inequality, corruption, ethics in government, also important issues. But I did serve briefly on the East Aurora School Board from 2015 to 2019, and then was recently elected here on the Aurora City Council in the at-large position. We have 10 wards in our city, and then we have 2 at-large aldermen that look at multi-ward issues and essentially represent the whole city. Aurora is the second largest city in the state of Illinois. Of course, everybody's heard of Chicago, but we're Chicago's little brother, little sister, just southwest of the big city.
That's true. And John is a very good friend, and he's always available for these kind of dialogues or these kind of contribution to the society. He's whenever I invite him for any kind of initiatives that LibraryCreate takes, John is always available. So John, that speaks of your intentions and of your dedication to the betterment of the society. So thank you so much. We are really grateful. And as far as LibraryCreate concerned, you know about it little bit, but we started the organization by keeping in mind that how can we make libraries and books available to the kids that don't have that privilege that all of us have here in United States. Like across the world, if you go to government schools, public schools, it is very difficult to have those libraries because of funding, logistics issues. There are many issues that prevents that. And in absence of libraries, kids don't have access to the books that they need. They only have access to the academic books. And these kids are very bright. They do really good academically, but then they fall behind in other areas. They don't have that imagination that they can get by reading different kind of books. So they don't get the opportunity to have that variety of different dimensions that you can get just by going into the books deep. So our idea how we can provide that environment, and how we can physically, and also how we can make sure that through these kind of sessions, how can we encourage kids to read more, and also how can we encourage schools to have better facilities that can provide all sort of like different tools for the kids to nurture and to succeed in the life. So that's where we started this dialogue session, where we bring people like you and others, my friends from here and across the India, who are very successful and who has some experience in the education background, or from their journey of their life, and can share the experience to encourage these kids. So that's the intent of Library Creates Dialogue. It is called Samvad in Hindi, which is exchanging the dialogue or talking to each other. So in like most of these sessions, we have kids also attending from the schools on the other side from India. But as you know, like in next 2 weeks, especially this week is like it's our on holidays. This is a holiday season in India as well. They are not there, but they have opportunity to ask questions. They have opportunity to like build network, so they can ask questions later on as well. So that's the intent of this initiative. So they can also fly in future. That's the intent, as you see on the image. And this is my photo from 2021 from the school that we are actively coordinating. Mr. Binod Sharma is the director of the school. He was also supposed to join today. Maybe he'll join later. It's early morning in India. But this is I like to connect with kids whenever I go to India. So this is one of those pictures always I remember, and it like gives me every day new excitement to do these kind of things. So with that introduction, I'll ask you a few questions if that's okay.
Yeah. Do you mind if I have the first question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Well, maybe you can save it for the end. But I was curious, what in India, how does the New Year's celebration look? I know Diwali is a little bit different, but around the same time as Christmas. But I'm just curious what the holiday season looks like. What days do people take off of work?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, definitely. So Diwali is definitely like a Christmas, right? It's like
mhm,
really big. People take off for a few days. They go to their villages, cities, and native places to celebrate with their family. They unite with their family like Thanksgiving and Christmas. I would say mix of it. So definitely it's like pretty big. But then if you see similarities, that it is kind of November, October, November some area, like where here also like the holiday season or the festive season starts, right? So same thing in India. Christmas is also pretty big. Not because of we have Christian community that celebrates like really vibrantly, and India is a country that supports all the religions, encourages all the religions to celebrate their own festivals. But Christmas is something a very global, right, festival. So people start. I remember in my childhood, we used to have like entire week off, because of like New Year, Christmas, and all that. I'm not sure now, but still, I think it's a holiday. It's not celebrated outside as much, but in within schools and all that, you celebrate as a holiday. But outside, when you go, like you know, if you find Christian communities or churches, there they celebrate. But in most of the India, you won't find that every household is celebrating. Things are now different. I'm telling you, like 20 years back, right? 15 years back. But then the new year is like a new year. People celebrate, like hotels are booked, there are parties all night, until it's
okay.
like midnight. It's difficult to find a hotel, and the restaurants would be full. I remember my sister, actually, it's her birthday. So we were in India last year this time. We wanted to celebrate it really big, but on 31st evening, but everything was booked. But her birthday is on 1st of January, so we celebrated on 1st. We were able to get hotel easily, but the entire staff was like really like kind of lazy, because they
Yeah, they
they
worked. They worked the previous day.
yeah, they work throughout the night. So that speaks, right? It's kind of similar environment like what we see here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt your questions, but I you piqued my curiosity.
No, it's all good. I mean, this is how we need to proceed with the dialogue. Like, it should be like very informal. So I'll stop sharing now,
Mhm.
because then we can like focus more on questions and our discussion. So, as you mentioned, you briefly served on the board for the one of the school district here. In India, it's different. It's not like a school district concept. There you have a board for entire state, and there is a central board. So central board means like a federal they have schools like called central schools, and then every state has its own board and they run their schools like on a state level. It's not
Okay.
like each area have its own district. um, so it's a little different, but the concept is same, that there is a authority that decides, like there's a board that decides the curriculum, the exams, how they should be conducted. So we would like to know from your experience, what insight did you gain during your tenure as a school board member?
Yeah. So in the US, as you know, there's the national level education policy sort of draws broad curriculum requirements. And then the state level, a lot more curriculum requirements, testing requirements, so forth. And then it's up to the local governing body to implement a lot of both of those um, curriculum policies,
Yeah.
etc. And I was on the District 131 school board. There was 7 members, all elected by the people to represent the people. So I don't know how it works in India, but every school district in Illinois is different. I believe you were in District 204,
Yep.
where there's an enormous amount of opportunities.
Yeah.
And then right next door, I was in District 131 School Board, which is one of the highest poverty districts in the state of Illinois. So
Mm-hmm.
the problems that we face are different from the problems faced
Yep.
in District 204. When I came on the board in 2015, we didn't even have buses. This is the oldest school
Oh,
district in the entire state of Illinois, is
wow.
131, and we still don't have school buses.
That's surprising.
But we were successful. We got buses for students. It made a big difference. Just to get kids to school is a hurdle. And so, making these small improvements, and the other big thing that we were able to accomplish was to get a contract for a long-term superintendent for 5 years. We had incredibly high turnover. I'm sure you know, organizationally, you can't implement any meaningful policy changes or structure, or even hire staff, if you don't have some stability. And we've seen these two differences have made a pretty big difference in improving academic performance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how District 131 compares to 204,
No, no,
but I
but
know that
yeah,
204 has very good numbers
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
statewide. So we're proud that we made some progress here. And I don't know how different it is from school district to school district in India, but here there can be some pretty dramatic changes. I guess some my reflections uh, and what I personally learned is that I think it's a, it's important to analyze where the big problems are and try and focus in and arrive at solutions. And then I also feel like I really learned to listen to staff and experts during that time, and as well listening to the students and what the students have to say. For example, um, students came to us one time and said that they wanted a no idle zone for the school buses, because they're the ones, as they're standing in line waiting, that they have to
Yeah.
inhale the diesel pollution.
Right.
So this is a good example of how students can make a difference, to come to the board to share
Yeah.
their opinion, and then for us to implement that suggested change.
Yeah. And how did you hear, like, what was the protocol? Like, how did you get the students' voice to the board?
So there were 2 elected. They're not elected; they're appointed. They go through an interview process, and there's 2 student representatives on the board itself.
Got it.
And so they give a report, and they are the liaison between the student body and the elected school board. They don't have a vote, but they can have a voice. They can speak
Yeah.
up and share their opinion.
Th-
Of course, other avenues, students can come and just speak directly to the board in public comment for 3 minutes and share their opinion.
Yeah.
Illinois has a rule that mandates that any citizen can come before any elected body and give a minimum of 3 minutes time to share their concern.
That's pretty interesting. I love it. The idea, I'm sure every school here has it. But, hearing directly from students, I remember like when I was a kid, we used to have school monitors, and also we used to have school representatives, sort of like just to talk to principal, and but on a board level, it's amazing. That you have the representation from kids. So now as we move on, I think I love the kind of what you said, like, hearing out the problems. What are the large problems? What are the, things that you can solve in a short time frame? What are the problems that will take longer, right? But like, what measures would you suggest for schools to create an environment that is a learning environment, as well as kids love to come to school, like learning as well as fun environment?
Mm,
Uh,
sure, good question. Well, I think this is a very long list. You've given me a good, but
uh-huh.
number one thing I think right now is how do we remove some of the distractions from the classrooms, particularly with respect to cell phones. I think
Mm-hmm.
we have a society are becoming more and more disconnected from each other as human beings and having our conversations like this instead of face to
Yeah,
face. And I think that,
yeah,
just how do you change that? There's some teachers, though, they have a big little pocket of place people put their cell phones with their name on it when they come in the door,
yeah.
to try and put attention into the learning environment. Um, Universally, I think the number one thing that uh, we've seen is that the smaller the classroom size and the more attention that a teacher can give each student, more
Yep,
individualized care,
that's true.
and help focus towards that student's individual needs.
Yeah.
I think that's very important, um, to try and do that. And again, this is another change we are able to make on the District 131 school board. We're averaging 31 students to one
Mm-hmm.
teacher per classroom. It's a little bit large. I don't know what 204 is, but they narrowed it down to 25 to 1. But even I think if you can get that number down to 12 to 1, 10 to 1, like a lot of private schools, you're just going to
Yeah,
kids are going to get the attention they need. The teacher's going to be able to work with them
yeah.
to foster their interests individually. And I think the whole entire education system as a whole, if we were, we've seen this standardization of testing. So we
Mm-hmm.
have a standardized test uh, globally, and then we've also got them like 5 or 6 tests here in the
Yeah,
state of Illinois. It's ridiculous that we're constantly testing, but if you think about it, we're standardizing an education to make sure everybody's hitting certain bars, but we're not individualizing the education system. So that I think to me that's the number one thing that changes. How do
that's
we
interesting. Yeah.
how do we individualize this person's experience? Yes, we all need to learn how to read. We all need to learn how to do math. But how do we foster this individual's interests into the education outcomes and then ultimately a career path that
More like a
works
fit
for
to
them?
purpose, right? Like, looking at a particular situation, how do we fit to that purpose? It can be like a different level of interest in the kids, right? Some kids are really good into mechanics. Some kids are really good in building, but this all focus on academics sometimes, definitely, and then having like a common core for all the students. I think definitely it definitely need to be revisited, because certain pockets, right, those kids have seen different environments and they are expert in different things. So maybe like, enhancing those kind of skills where they have seen from the childhood, right? I think those kids maybe, I think, can do really better. So
Well, interesting. I don't know how it works in India, but we we had several exchange students when I was in high school, and one coming from um, Norway. And he said very early on they will do exactly what you said. I think by eighth or ninth grade, he said he was going to be an engineer,
yeah.
and that his path then is to be an engineer. So they focus the education um, towards that path based on his testing
Yeah,
and his interests
right.
and so forth.
Yeah, I remember like in India they have a system of polytechnic schools, colleges, like, but that's after 12th class, like after your high school, like, you can have very custom and narrowly focused. They are not like engineering college, but they are more like a um day-to-day use, and they are like you can get like a degree in less years than 4. So and then it's sort of a community college sort of style in my view. I may be wrong. Yeah, but it's across the world. I think the education is I think the lens all the educators use is a common lens for all the kids. I think which definitely need to change in this world. So one thing I wanted to ask you in that nowadays I see the problem is this iPhone, not iPhone, like a phone, right? Phone is like a gadget that can do good or bad, right? So,
Mhm.
is there anything schools can do to limit the use of electronics so that kids can go more into reading, more into talking, more into like doing things in the lab rather than always on the phone? Because this is a big distraction as I see as a parent, as like a social worker or what you call it, whatever you call it. But as I see these kids nowadays, I don't know, I see outside the school, but I'm sure in the school also you would see a similar behavior.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally, I haven't been in I don't have children, and I've never been a classroom educator, but I've listened to what educators are saying, and
Yeah.
this is a growing issue for them. It goes beyond just the distraction from the classroom, but it also plays into cyberbullying and sort of the disconnectedness that people can sometimes experience as they're transitioning, especially
Hmm.
their teenage years. So I think that, I mean, I don't, finding a way to keep it out of the classroom. I mean, obviously it's an educational, it could be an educational tool, but I don't think that's what most students in the classroom, at least in the United States, are using it for. They're using it to text each other back and forth and maintain their TikTok channel. So
Yeah, it's a tough problem to solve, right? Yeah, like, my next question was for you around social and self objectives. Like, how can we nurture the next generation that balances out social and personal objectives? And like,
mhm,
like kids are like growing, they are also thinking about the society. They are also thinking about um, not just the money, but like more they have larger objectives, like that they want to change the way we work every day, right? Or we want, like, if you see Elon Musk or others, right, they had larger objectives in their life, right? That's why they are larger than life now, right? Whether changing from those um uh, vehicles from the gas driven to the electric vehicles, right? I think they are called ICE vehicles, right? If I'm not wrong. I
internal
don't.
combustion engine.
Yes,
Mhm.
right. Yeah, ICE. So, or like, um, Steve Jobs having different, like, how can he has music into everyone's pocket? That was the his initial objective, right? Um, and he got 100 songs or whatever into the small pocket called iPod, right, in the beginning,
Mhm.
and then evolution into this. But those are the examples from like that they had always that vision that changed the lives. But then also like Martin Luther King Jr. or Mahatma Gandhi, and like how do we like grow that kind of kids, right? That's another thing. What kind of environment we can create, right, for kids in schools, like whether here or in India or everywhere. I mean,
Mhm.
that environment may not require a lot of investment. It may be just like the way we teach or the way we present ourselves, right? The way we show the vision to the kids, and that's where the books are important, right? What I was saying earlier, that
Mhm.
when you read it, you go into a different world. If you're reading a
Mhm.
Harry Potter, maybe it's not reality, but you see different, like the vision of the writer, and then that's a different dimension that kids like can try to work in order to make it real. So they will not be able to make it completely real, like going into a platform through a wall, but at least some sort of automation they can bring. So how can, like, is there any idea or any opinion or any point of view you have on that?
So first of all, I think it's an excellent question. I don't know that I'm the best person to answer any question about balance, but because I'm very much a workaholic, I admit it, and uh, don't necessarily balance my own life out well. But I do think that educationally, one trend that we're seeing, and again, I'm not really, I'm a very much a right brain person, logical. person, but I do believe that you might start to see a little bit more of this simply because the standardized testing and focus on standardized education with Common Core has taken away a lot of classroom hours for art, for music,
Yeah,
and these things that foster the other side of the brain and creativity. And I think that both are necessary for your top performing people. I mean,
yeah,
look, some people are very driven. You mentioned some very driven people in our history, but I do think that listening to a lot of teachers, they were very concerned, even to where recess and playtime is uh, just reduced dramatically. And it's one thing. How do we restore social interaction? There is a a bill in Springfield that would mandate. It was initially called the yoga bill, but now it's called the intentional downtime bill, which mandated, I think, 20 minutes a week for downtime, for meditation, for people to just take. It's not for interaction, but to take time away and unplug both from the reality, but also from their cell phone, and
hmm,
to explore some ways to free the flow of information in their minds. But again, I don't know that I'm the best person to answer this question. I just listen to what the
yeah,
people who are in the classroom are suggesting.
yeah.
What are
Sometimes,
your thoughts on it?
no, yeah, my thoughts are on that is like the art, music and all that is valid point, but how do we also take kids to different field trips? Because you learn from
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
practically seeing things, right? We are ignoring the agriculture sector completely. We are ignoring the sector where kids are able to build in the high school, right? They are able to build the computers, they are able to like operate on things. So I think we need to have more field trips, not only to the nearby areas, but just like take kids to other countries, take kids to across the US. And I think those things should be manageable, they should be cheaper, right? It should not be like, if the kids trip is going to the Spain, you need to spend $5,000, so only few people can you know
Mhm. Yeah.
afford that. It should be affordable. So I think some creative ideas need to happen in that direction, where kids are able to interact with other kids.
Mhm.
Kids are able to go into the fields more often. They are able to, as you said, like have opportunity to learn music, do painting, do things that they like to do. I think that's another good area. So I think that is how I see we can like produce better quality next generation that has um, that has focused on the practical nature of the life, because you can learn a lot from there.
Yeah.
And that's where I think my second question is that I think in the world, if you see, the focus is coming on the education level is going up. When I grew up, the education um, percentage was very low in India. I don't remember exact number, but I can tell, like from the family in the village where I grew up, it was like the older generation was not literate. They would just read hardly. So then the education, government paid a lot of attention on the education. A lot of like schools became a business, because everyone wanted to send their kids to school then, right? And there were less schools, more people, right? In the United States also see a lot of focus across the world, right? But then how can we now start thinking the balancing education? The balancing education is that if you see 204, you give the example of 204 and 131, like, it's a different metrics. So either the metrics are wrong, or we are not able to balance or trade off the facilities that we provide to the kids, the teachers we provide to the kids, the libraries, the books, and like what they need. So like, our mission Library Create, where we want to provide the libraries to the kids, right? So they can read novels, they can read like different literatures, they can read comics, they can read like whatever they like. So
Mhm.
how like countries like US and countries in Europe and other countries can like balance this? I know it's a tough question, but just like I just wanted to kind of, you never
Sure.
know, like somebody is viewing it, and it's a provoking question as well. Like how, like think about people like Bill Gates. They spend millions of dollars on literacy missions, but are they thinking about that the books are the basic necessity, which in a lot of countries people don't have, right? And also there are different level of facilities available even within the countries, forget the nations, right? So how do we balance it out? It's a, yeah, we talk about the social balancing, but I'm talking about the balance in education expenditure, balance in educational logistics.
Uh, I'm very curious about this question. I don't want to distract from the question you threw out there, but interestingly enough, my father was talking about uh, education in India, and he literally said that it had to do with business modeling, that Microsoft, was looking at all these software engineers in the Silicon Valley and saying these people cost too much money. So let's just move our entire operation over to India
Yeah, yeah,
and let's enhance their education system. Now, I don't know what that looked like on the other side. This was just my father attended a seminar and they were talking about this as how a new way of thinking globally from a business perspective, not necessarily an education perspective. I do think that, first of all, simply one thing we can do to make it affordable. We have Zoom now, thanks. I mean, COVID really opened up our
yeah,
everybody's skill set and ability to have these dialogues like we're having right now. It's
yeah,
certainly something we could do just even around the holidays, if you think about it, to exchange and see how other people um, celebrate different holidays, why they do it, what kind of things they wear, and what just to experience somebody else's culture
yeah,
alone
yeah,
and gain some understanding when if we're speaking the same language and understanding things. I think that alone would broaden people's
yeah,
curiosity and interests, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
the
I
other
mean, and yeah, go ahead, complete your
I was gonna
thought. Yeah.
say the
Hmm.
only education thing I had an experience in college level called Model United Nations, where a bunch of kids
Yeah.
from across America met in New York and pretended that we all came from different countries.
Yes, yes.
How how do I understand it? I mean, so at this point in my life, I had been to the Middle East. I grew up in Africa, and I knew a little bit of American culture. So, but I'm not going to understand the country. I is somewhere in the former Yugoslavia that I was there to represent. But so I have to educate myself on
Yeah,
this, which is part of the thing. But what if you had that sort of cultural exchange? Look in your political science, your global political science classes, to actually listen to somebody on the other side of the world talking about the issues that are happening in their country.
yeah.
So it's just a thought.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I think yeah, my kids also were in that club. And they take, I think, trip to the Springfield. I think that was very helpful. Just to prepare, right, yourself like that you're representing a different country like a Nepal or
Mhm.
um, any country in the world, right? And then understanding that, I think that was a really good concept. I like that club, but I think there are clubs, but I don't. There's not much focus on those clubs, and those clubs are teaching a lot of good things to kids. But I wanted to ask, like, this is probably the last question from my side. We talked about exchanging ideas. I think that can definitely help in growing a better students and also helping the society. So how City of Aurora can help? Like maybe like that's something you can take as a follow up. But if you have any ideas like in these exchanges, how do we bring some school kids, and I can help bridging that gap where we can bring some kids like on Zoom from India, and these kids are interacting with each other. We can try to bridge the gap on the communication part, but I think that will be a great experience. Or if you have any other ideas, like from city side, like if there is a way to kind of do more of these things. Yeah,
So again, I think one thing, first of all, I will say since I've lived here, we've done a better job. I think the city's doing a better job. Uh, representing all of our communities culturally with ceremonial things like flag raisings,
Yeah, yeah.
but there's still room for improvement, for more authenticity with respect to some of the other cultural events. But I don't have any genius idea in my back pocket about how the city of Aurora can be more engaged. I do think that having sister cities, and visiting those places, but even having exchanges at maybe at the school level is something that
Yeah,
happens more at the school
yeah.
level. It was valuable for me to see these kids from Norway that came. So I went to Newark, which is founded by Norwegians. So they came
Mm-hmm.
from Norway to Little
Yeah,
Norway in the U.S. But I, I would say definitely the idea of bringing kids and sending some kids to India to learn what it's like in their
yeah.
daily course, right? So to see where you compare. What
Yeah.
we found with the Norwegian kids is they were superior, they were above education.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean it's a learning on their like how do they study kids, right? So nobody looks at that angle, like, like I remember, like, if you in Indian culture you wake up early, and it's a different environment. So it's a way of working as well. You learn when you do the cultural exchanges. But what I was alluding, my question was more into like if city of Aurora can somehow steer the gear for Zoom, like the virtual exchanges, while we talk about the physical exchanges, which is a little tough due to logistics and all that. But through Zoom, if we can somehow encourage schools to participate with LibraryCreate or some other organizations with Indian schools or African schools, and once in a quarter, if the kids are exchanging the idea, I think that can be another good idea, right? Where city can maybe play some role. I don't know, just like
I would think it would be more
yeah,
easier to coordinate with the school itself,
school board. Yeah,
um,
right. That's true.
because as a as a alderman or city official, certainly we can go to express our opinions. We can put money at something, so that is something that the city can do to help support any additional program. But I would want to say that it would probably have to primarily be run through the schools,
Yeah,
just because it affects kids.
yeah, but
Or
that's a
I
good
mean,
learning. That's a
the
yeah,
library exchange is also another good idea,
yeah, yeah.
and work through the Aurora Public Library.
Yep,
But
yep. I think this is another learning for people who are watching this or will watch later in India, that how school boards work independently here without cities interference, right? Uh,
yes.
yeah,
So it's
so
different. It's different in India then, is what you're saying.
yeah,
That
right. Yes.
okay. And then how are the libraries? They probably don't have their own governing board either. They probably is it a volunteer? Is it nonprofit? Is it
Like libraries, you mean? Oh,
well? What
libraries
is
like a city?
yeah?
So
Or is it?
it's not as organized as we see here. Things are things are changing, but you won't find, like, here the tax drives the library. You pay the tax, and that the fund goes to the, you know how do you maintain, how do you how do you take care of those libraries, how you can grow them, how you can open more, right? How do you
Mhm,
pay, how can you pay from the taxes to on the infrastructure of the library in India? um, it is, I don't think it's that organized. And again, the India has made big changes in last 10 years, so things are changing. We will see in next 10 years, we will see different India. As you said, like, they have brightest brains, like in a software, you see like all the software companies, the CEOs now you see from Adobe to Microsoft, uh,
mhm,
to Google, all those things, like, CEOs are from like India origin. So definitely the brightest minds are there. But then there's a lot of like, they are the most crowded nation in the world, right? So there are many people also, right? So we need to think about that also, like, while people or kids who have privilege, they are able to conquer the world, right? They are able to come out and definitely lead, but then there is still a bigger number that is still is not able to even imagine, right? That there's a that they can fly. So my objective, or our library creates objective, is to kind of work in the rural areas, and kind of empower them and showcase them that you have those I come from that background as well. So there are kids who are able to really go far, but then not everyone, right? So I think like India is the brightest spot, and you will see different India in next 10 years, but still a lot of work need to be done still. That's how I feel it.
I have one more thought, real quick,
Yeah,
just to,
sure.
the other thing that interests me, of course, is we've been having this discussion is how do we work together to address the climate crisis? This is a global problem
Yeah.
where both countries are a little bit guilty with fossil fuels, and so both have to come up with our solution. And I think that we in Aurora especially are not moving as fast as other cities, but I'm very interested in having this discussion either through the education institutions or just um,
Yeah.
nonprofits that are working on the problem over there. To me, that is the thing that is most interesting to me, I think,
Well,
personally.
if you promise me to come back one more time, then we can have that as a theme. We can
Mm,
ask people in India, like on the ground level, like what they think, because it's a very complicated topic. It's a political topic, because it is about growth versus climate, right? So if you are accelerating the growth, you have to compromise on that. But then we are not realizing that if we compromise on climate, then the growth may not sustain, right? The
mhm.
civilization may not sustain. And then there are examples that countries like India and China will give for UK and US, like you had an enormous growth in 80s 90s, and you never paid attention on the climate, and now you are teaching us. So it's like that's like my kind of 5,000 feet view. But it is definitely a subject that we all need to pay attention, and we all need to um, sincerely think about it, that any effort that we make, we should have the climate change as one of the parameters, right? How are we balancing it or not? And I think every city, every organization need to do there, and every person also need to do a bit of, but I don't think we are thinking
But
in that direction. People are
it
not thinking.
involves it
Yeah,
involves the education system as well to re-educate people when to think about it, but
that's true.
also
Yeah, to make aware, right? And which I don't, you are
well,
right, actually.
and to tap into the best and brightest.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we can make that as one of the topics, actually, in our future discussions in this series.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
I would like that. I'm going to I've been working on the casino and trying to put a stop to it, but now I think I'm coming back in the new year focusing on climate and environment. So
Definitely, yeah, you have all my support. And the
and
reason is, yeah, go ahead.
Ram, I'm happy to introduce you to some of the school board members at East Aurora. I know a few in District 204, but I think your idea is a good one about the cultural exchange. We have this
Yeah,
technology at a minimum. We should be doing something along these lines.
I agree with you, and I think I also know some people in 204. So I think I agree, we should reach out to those board members, and they can then talk to schools to kind of to get us on the track for this kind of exchange. Even we do with one or two schools, I'm telling you, it will have enormous impact on the kids that we are growing here, and on the kids that are talking in India to US kids, right? It's gonna have enormous impact on both sides. They're gonna learn from each other. Cultural like transfer is one of the best thing you can do without giving anything, because you learn
Mhm.
from from each other's experience. You are contributing to each other's to each society when you are doing the cultural exchanges. That's my view. But with that, I think it was great. I know a lot of time you gave to us. I enjoyed discussing with you, and
Yeah.
I think
I always learn a lot when I talk to you. I'm
yeah,
appreciative of your time as
yeah,
well.
it's like just sit down calmly, let the discussion flow in, right? And we learn a lot from each other. So it's likewise, I also learned a lot from your point of views, and would like to have you again back with the kids next time, with the students in India, or maybe in other countries. We are also talking to some South American countries where we have some schools, so maybe some kids there as well. So we would love to have you in future as well. But thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ram.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.